Hello, people. Today I want to talk to you about how you can go from keyword research to some pretty decent content briefs, and a fair amount of them in about under an hour. And I use a combination of a couple of tools which I'll run you through, like the purpose of using them, conceptually how you can use them, and some examples of what you could do yourself. So when it comes to keyword research, I now tend to fairly heavily go down the keyword clustering route. So getting as many keyword variations as I can around a topic, and then using AI and machine learning to cluster the keywords in a thematic format. Usually by these type of clustering tools will Google all the various keywords, and if more than say 6 to 8 of the pages are the same search result is returned for two separate keywords, it will cluster them into one, because it assumes that Google, a trillion-dollar company, has worked out context and user intent in terms of keyword suggestions and usage. So yes, it's pretty clever. These tools are getting more and more sophisticated, and they save you more and more time. So I will give you an example. I wanted to find out about first-time buyers. This is mortgage related. I wanted to see, what relevant keywords exist, how they look, and what the landscape is of how people search for first-time buyer-related mortgages. So I came to a tool called KeywordInsights.ai. I will link to the website in the description below, either description on YouTube or comment on LinkedIn. And I came to this site, and I basically used the keyword discovery section of this tool, which is basically you can enter a query in a keyword, select target country, what search engine you want to use, and let it run, and it will give you thousands and thousands of keyword areas that you can then filter out for relevancy. Once you have those, which will show something like this, long tail to generic queries, you can choose to then cluster these keywords out of here, which is this tool, this selector here, and you get a bunch of options. You can name the project, what language. You can pick the clustering option, which you can choose English for. It will suggest, show you a title generator, give you context on the queries, and then you can also, and the context is whether it's commercial or informational, and it will also, I think that's what it is, feel free to correct me afterwards, and you can also plug in a root domain, and it will show you whether your domain ranks for any of the queries that it's found and clustered. So let's jump into the clustering section, project section. And if I click the first time buyer report, this tool has taken all those keywords that I have essentially taken and found relevant, and clustered them into essentially topical clusters that you can use for content creation. Now this has created, so within the space, I think this took me 20 minutes. I went from conceptualized keyword and clustering to it potentially showing me 199 different clusters, of which I would say you can conflate about 50 of those into some of the things that it's maybe clustered slightly inaccurately, if you're being really, really picky. But I would still say the accuracy is over 90% in terms of how it clusters the keywords. You then have an option from this tool to export this information, which I'll show you how that looks, or you can create briefs directly from this interface, this is giving me a suggestion. They want mortgage for first-time buyers, or mortgage first-time buyers, which obviously grammatically doesn't make sense. But mortgage, I could pick mortgage for first-time buyers as the brief title. I could hit plus here, and on this right-hand side, I can essentially tell it to create a brief for that kind of main query that I want to pick. I can then click generate report and it will go off and do its thing. So while I'm showing you that, I'll show you what it exports. So out of all those keyword clusters, you can actually export a lot of that data, or all of the data. It exports it into a Google Sheet or an Excel doc and gives you pivot tabled keyword data. So this is where it goes. This is the main head keyword, even though actually a lot of these have got similar volumes because they're grammatically used slightly differently. And for this head term, these are all of the other keywords you could rank for if you added them to this page. So mortgage for first-time buyers, first-time buyer mortgages in the UK, how to get mortgage in the UK as a first-time buyer. Obviously, you could extrapolate this wording, right, to actually make it sensical. But this is how people are searching, so it makes sense for it to be clustered this way. And you can essentially use this to extrapolate out your own briefs. And on this example here, you've got first-time buyer best mortgage. It looks more like a product page, and actually there are a lot of more queries behind this. You know, best first-time buyers mortgage and mortgages is a plural. You could probably remove those before you cluster the keywords. Lots of ways that you could cut this content, but I would essentially take this, and before I cluster this next time, remove some of the plural wording either way. But some of the things it does also extremely cleverly is, outside of this keyword clustering, it provides a hub section where it says this should be your hub piece of content, and here are all of the cluster pages you could create to support that piece of content too. And it then shows you all the relevant keywords for that spoke page. I call it a cluster page. The Keyword Insights call it a spoke page. But essentially, you could have a pillar and a cluster page, or a hub and a spoke page, and it shows you exactly what the supporting content could be. Now let's assume that you've got all this figured out and this is the way you want to use it. You can use this obviously manually. You could export it, add it to things like SEMrush or SEMrush or advanced web ranking. You could obviously start monitoring these rankings at aggregated keyword level rather than just individual keywords. But if you have your own briefing process, you can then start exporting this to your own briefing templates. If you don't, you can use something like Keyword Insights, which looks like it's completed. And what this does is it Googles and extracts the first 20 results of that keyword that we created as a brief. And it tries to give you all the titles and headings that all the top performing pages are using, which you can then essentially drag onto this brief generator, which you can then populate, edit yourself, add bullet points, add headings, edit yourself to create a bespoke brief, as well as creating a meta and a description for it, all within this one tool. So you could quite easily research a topic, cluster the keywords, and come up with a load of ideas. This even gives you average word counts, suggested word counts, gives you AI title suggestions. People also asked, but also Reddit and Quora. And then it shows you the other related clusters and cluster keywords that work for this brief. And once you're done with that, you can essentially copy this brief or export it to, I believe, Google Drive or Docs. So really easy to do, really easy to export. Another way of doing this, now there are lots of tools out there, right? They all do some pretty cool stuff. There is another tool called SEO Wind, and again, I will link to these guys in the description, where you could go and take this first cluster and keyword page, and you could essentially do the same for the hub and the spoke related briefs. But let's go back to this one. You could add in mortgages first time buyers, plug this into this tool, and it will go off and look at the SERPs, look at what's ranking, look at related queries, and essentially do something similar to Keyword Insights. But I think at the moment there are a couple of things that are slightly more in depth. I like Insights for clustering, keyword grouping, same thing. Keyword Insights, which, by the way, there is an option in the discovery part for you to, somewhere you can import a list. I can't remember where that is. I think it's here. Yeah, so with clustering, I believe there is a way where you can import your own list. I did it myself. I can't remember where it is. I'll do another video on it. But if we go back here, this should do its own thing soon. It's not. Let's just explore this for a little while longer. This Keyword Insights also gives you a weighting of what the search result is. So the top 10, or maybe, no, it's top 10 because these are to 10. Whether the majority of the results are an article, whether they're product or category level page or other. So anything that doesn't qualify as an article, product or category. It essentially gives you the type of search result that you should expect and or create based on what's already ranking, right? So let's, if we take this and Google this. Don't know why I've got .com showing. Change that. By the way, SEO Minion, I'll cover that another time. Great tool. So you can see here there's comparison sites, there's brands, and also like these hybrid article and product pages that are shown that are ranking for this type of content. And you can just get a feel for, okay, what's to be expected here. Now these, I would say, are fairly targeted searches, and it'll, to be able to rank for this type of stuff, there's a fairly big word count on some of those articles, as I've already looked at that. You just need to be aware of what's required to actually get anywhere near those types of results. This is still doing its thing. Here we go. Okay, so this has done some analysis, and because I set this to the UK, I believe the results should match what I've Googled here, and they do. This editor has got a couple of additions to Keyword Insights. I think the editing of how the outline looks to me slightly easier to use, but also what I like is, as part of this brief, you could take all these sub keywords and any others that you find relevant, and you can plug them into this secondary keywords section. And when you then copy the brief to clipboard, you can add those to the headlines in terms of what you want to get outlined. Now, this shows you the SERP. It also shows you within the SERP itself, like the related queries that these results are ranking for. But you can also see all of the outlines like you could in the other tool. So I think this covers top 10. Yeah, Keyword Insights covers top 20. But it actually also looks at questions to answer. So questions from Google, questions from Quora and Reddit, similar to Keyword Insights. It does also give you a recommendation of secondary keywords, which is that kind of cluster section on Keyword Insights. So you could, if you don't already have these, you could add them. First time mortgage. Again, look, you can see here, once you add these, it will add them to your outline. Now you could manually go through competitor outlines here. Or what SEO Wind have now also done is you can actually get an AI outline. So it looks at what's here, what's ranking, what's relevant. and it goes away and produces an outline for you any second now. Clustering headings with LMP, yes, of course you are. And by the way, I've had some really good feedback on this specifically as a briefing tool. It's starting to get more into clustering and some more automations, but briefing wise it does a great job. Maybe loads of people are signing up, which is why it's taking so long today, but I would highly recommend it. So yeah, you can take these queries, you can then plug them into either Keyword Insights, although this, like I showed you, already has the clusters in it as part of the brief, although you're paying per brief, similar to SEO Wind, but I'd say SEO Wind seems slightly easier to brief things with whenever it decides to do its thing. Choose headings, let's try and refresh it. Select all. Get AI outline, go. Do it now. I'll have to speak to Tom on why it's taking so long today. Tom Winter, by the way, on LinkedIn, created SEO Wind. Great guy, does some really cool stuff, including this. So yeah, you can essentially do what this does is it clusters what headings already exist. And based on this looking like a hybrid and product page, it's surmised that actually you want a mixture of things like fixed rate mortgages, you know, what the different mortgages are that you could have. I just unselected all of them. You want to understand what one is, who qualifies for it, top tips, you know, what you need to do with your deposit, how you improve your credit score, all this stuff for first-time buyers that they might want to know. It's kind of surmised that you want a mixture, which, looking at the search result, feels about right. You can select all of these and then add them to your brief, which then you can move around. So if you wanted to say you want who qualifies as a first-time buyer as the first heading, you can move it up. You can also, I believe, change the heading type. I'm not sure where that exists, but I'm sure it's somewhere. I think it's there. So if I select that, H3, H2, okay, it wants me to select H2, but you could play around with that. Once you're basically happy, you can also get it to give you title, first time buyer mortgages. Seems legit. Let's take that one. Okay, I have to select more than 3. That one, and that one. Generate title idea. It will do its thing in a second, anytime now. Once that is done, you can do the same with the description. It's covering the word count, I believe. I think Keyword Insights was suggesting 600 words. Okay, 852 SEO Wind is 2,640. So this is giving me an AI mortgage solutions for first-time buyers. Let's choose that one. It needs a bit of work, but just give you an outline, obviously capitalization, etc. You can do the same with descriptions, and it will go away, look at how they're being created, and you can then select them. But for the purposes of time and speed, I'm just going to pick one. Yeah, so you've got the keywords, you've picked secondary keywords from the cluster you already had, you picked the main hub query based on what was clustered there before, and you have a brief. Now you have an option, I believe, you you can copy it to clipboard or you can copy it to a Google Doc. So let me, can't export. Apparently that's an even more premium version of the tool. But if you copy it to clipboard, and I Google Docs this, go to Docs, here we go, test, first time buyer brief, and I was to paste the stuff from the tool. It's essentially copied and pasted all of that information into a brief directly in here. So it's got title, meta, focus keyword, secondary keywords, and then all of the headings that we picked, well, that the system picked, which you want to vet beforehand, but actually it does a pretty good job. And you can then essentially trim this up and either write it yourself or send it to somebody to create. Now, a couple of things I like to add to this stuff is, yeah, images are great, headings are great, but as well as words per heading for readability purposes, you know, things like tables, featured snippet, leaning towards featured snippet optimization. If it's a question-specific queries, I think to say, you know what I mean, question-specific keyword, and then, yeah, the brief's pretty much ready to go. So the clustering is, well, the keyword discovery is fairly easy. You can do that in KeywordInsights, you can do it in SEMrush, you can do it in Ahrefs. Lots of people have got different ways of doing this. I found it cheaper overall to SEMrush it, put it into KeywordInsights, just because of the amount of credits that are being used, and I'd need a longer, bigger subscription to be able to afford the amount of keyword research that I do on a per usage basis. But yeah, you can then take all that, add in things like tables, how you want the content to be structured. You can add all that to that, what I call, and what a lot of people now call, content design. I think, you know, this should be called content design as a heading. I'll probably make that suggestion to Tom at some point. It's like giving people specific things on how it should work. You know, should tables exist in any of these headings themselves to make it as easy as possible? Probably like readability, age, preference, that kind of stuff. Things like anchored links for, you know, ease of browsing. Understand there are different complexities to that. I still prefer to use it that way. Ranked a lot of good content using text or link anchors, anchored links. There we go. Just literally lost all trail of thought. So yeah, hopefully you can see what you can achieve. So KeywordInsights into this, into potentially this. It's a bit more primitive right now, but they're definitely improving things. Or into this, which is all AI driven, which is currently my preference from a briefing point of view. Clustering, definitely KeywordInsights.ai, which then leads to this. And, you know, you can then see the structure of how things progress. You can make sure that things save in the same folder for the same customer. You know, lots of ways that you could scale this type of stuff. And a couple of things I haven't mentioned yet, which I'm going to go through separately. Some of these do cover also asked questions, like questions to answer here, questions from Google. But there are tools like alsoask.com that go in at a much higher depth. Very good for real-time discovery. And there also are free tools that you can use to supplement, like question-based searches, which is a tool called SEO Minion. But with this keyword level content, I prefer to supplement. Also, people also asked questions, not to have them as always an FAQ in the content, but actually to answer the question that people have additionally within the content itself. So, what mortgage is best for a first-time buyer? How much can I borrow? Can I get 100% mortgage? How much deposit do I need? What do I do to qualify? These don't always have to be questions and answers within the content. You can actually test just answering this query in a way that is natural. In order to qualify as a first-time buyer, you need to have never owned a property, blah 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 blah, rather than question and then the answer itself. I'll leave that to you. You do you. But from some tests, there are definitely some differing results based on how you approach that. Anyway, yes, both tools very useful, slightly more useful for different use cases. I'll link to them in the description and comments, and let me know if you trial it yourself and if you see better results as you use it. I would definitely move to this type of way of working if you're not doing so already. Catch you on the next one. Over and out.